I drove 4 hours through rain to watch my son ring the opening bell at his company's IPO celebration, but when I reached the entrance of the Pinnacle Hotel ballroom, I wasn't greeted by my son. I was greeted by a security guard holding an iPad with my driver's license photo displayed on the screen. Above my picture, in bold red letters, were 5 words that shattered 20 years of fatherhood. Remove on sight. Trespasser. I didn't argue. I didn't demand to speak to Marcus. I simply adjusted the collar of my flannel shirt, nodded to the guard, and walked back to my 2003 Chevy Silverado, parked 3 blocks away, because valet parking cost $40. I sat in the cab of my truck, rain drumming on the roof, and I made one phone call to my lawyer. 30 minutes later, the champagne stopped flowing, the stage lights went dark, and my son learned that his billion-dollar IPO had just been canceled by the man he was too ashamed to let through the door. Before I tell you how I dismantled his empire in less than an hour, let me take you back to where this story really begins. My name is Thomas Wright. I'm 65 years old, and to anyone who sees me, I'm just another old man who worked his whole life in factories and retired with a pension that barely covers the bills. I drive a truck with 200,000 miles on it. I wear the same 4 flannel shirts I've owned for a decade. I live in a small ranch house on the edge of town with a yard I mow myself and a garage full of tools I've collected over 40 years. To the world, I'm invisible. To my son, Marcus, I'm an embarrassment. But here's what Marcus doesn't know. That factory worker story, it's not a lie, but it's not the whole truth either. I did work in factories, just not on the floor. I was the guy who bought them, fixed them, and sold them for 10 times what I paid. I started with one failing machine shop in 1985, turned it around in 2 years, and never looked back. By the time I was 40, I owned a portfolio of manufacturing facilities across the Midwest. When I turned 55, I sold the whole operation to a private equity firm for $87 million. I kept the money quiet. I kept the lifestyle simple. Not because I was cheap, but because I wanted to teach my son that wealth doesn't define a man. His character does. His work does. His word does. I wanted him to build something real, something he could be proud of, not something handed to him on a silver platter. I failed. The trouble started 6 months ago when Marcus invited me to lunch. It was a Tuesday afternoon at some overpriced bistro downtown, where a sandwich costs $24 and comes with 3 leaves of arugula. Marcus was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my mortgage payment. His fiancée, Vanessa, sat next to him, scrolling through her phone, her nails so long she had to type with her knuckles. "Dad," Marcus said, leaning forward with that fake sincerity he'd perfected. "Vanessa and I have been talking. We think it's time you sold the house." I put down my coffee. "The house I built with my own hands? The house your mother and I raised you in? It's not a good look, Dad," Vanessa chimed in without looking up from her screen. "Marcus is about to take Tech Vista public. We're going to be in Forbes, Bloomberg, everywhere. People are going to dig into his background. If they find out his father lives in a fixer-upper in a working-class neighborhood, it sends the wrong message." "What message would that be?" I asked. "That we came from nothing," Marcus said. "That I had to claw my way up. It's not the narrative we're building. We're telling investors that Tech Vista was born from innovation, from vision, not from—" He gestured vaguely at me. "Struggle." "I see," I said. "And what narrative are you building about me?" Vanessa finally looked up. "We're not building a narrative about you at all, Mr. Wright. That's the point. It's better if you stay in the background. Maybe move to Florida? Isn't that what retired factory workers do?" I paid for lunch. I didn't argue. I didn't lecture. I simply smiled, stood up, and walked out of that bistro, knowing that my son had learned nothing from the life I tried to give him. He'd learned to be ashamed of where he came from, instead of proud of what it took to get where he was going. What Marcus didn't know, what he'd never bothered to ask, was how he'd funded Tech Vista in the first place. When he came to me 4 years ago with his business plan for a cloud-based analytics platform, he needed $3 million in seed funding. He'd been rejected by every venture capital firm in the city. They all said the same thing. Too ambitious, Too risky, too unproven. So I funded it. Not as his father with a checkbook, but through a shell corporation called Ironclad Ventures, LLC. I had my lawyer structure it as a convertible note that would give me 60% equity if the company ever went public. Marcus thought Ironclad was some faceless investment group out of Delaware. He had no idea that the man signing the checks was the same man he was too ashamed to introduce to his investors. I watched him build Tech Vista from the shadows. I watched him hire brilliant engineers, launch a product that actually worked, and sign contracts with Fortune 500 companies. I was proud. He was doing it, really doing it, building something real. But somewhere along the way, the success went to his head. He stopped returning my calls. He stopped visiting unless he needed something. And when I showed up at his office unannounced last Christmas wearing my work boots and a flannel jacket, he had his assistant tell me he was in a meeting. I waited 3 hours. He never came out. The final straw came 2 weeks ago. I received an invitation in the mail. It was embossed, expensive, the kind of thing you frame. Tech Vista cordially invites you to celebrate our initial public offering at the Pinnacle Hotel Grand Ballroom. Black tie required. There was no personal note from Marcus, no phone call, just a generic invitation sent to T. Wright at my address, probably added to the mailing list by some assistant who didn't know I was his father. I called him that night. "Marcus," I said when he finally picked up, "I got your invitation." "Oh yeah," he said. His voice was distant, distracted. "That's just for investors and board members, Dad. It's going to be pretty formal. Probably not your scene." "I'd like to come," I said. "I'd like to see you ring the bell." There was a long pause. "Dad, look, it's complicated. Vanessa's family is going to be there. Her father is putting in a major investment. These people, they're sophisticated. They're used to a certain—" He trailed off. "A certain what?" I asked. "Level of professionalism," he finished. "I just think it might be uncomfortable for you. All the tech talk, the financial jargon. You'd be bored." "Try me," I said. Another pause. "Fine," he said. "But please, Dad, wear a suit. Not the one from 1995. A real suit. And maybe just tell people you're a retired consultant or something, not a factory worker." "I'll think about it," I said, and hung up. I didn't buy a new suit. I didn't buy anything. I put on my cleanest flannel shirt, my newest jeans, and my work boots that I'd polished until the scuffs were barely visible. I drove 4 hours through a thunderstorm because my son was having the biggest night of his professional life, and I wanted to be there. Not as an investor, not as the man who owned 60% of his company, but as his father. When I arrived at the Pinnacle Hotel, the entrance was lit up like a movie premiere. Valets were parking Teslas and Mercedes. Women in evening gowns and men in tuxedos were streaming through the doors. I pulled my truck up to the valet stand. A young man in a white jacket looked at my vehicle like I'd just driven up in a garbage truck. "Parking is $40, sir," he said, not moving to open my door. "I'll park it myself," I said. "Where's the lot?" He pointed to a public garage 3 blocks away. I drove there, paid $8, and walked back in the rain. The lobby of the Pinnacle was all marble and gold. I checked my reflection in one of the mirrored columns. My hair was wet. My flannel was damp. I looked exactly like what I was. A working man in a room full of people who'd never worked a day in their lives. I walked toward the ballroom entrance. A security guard stepped in front of me. He was holding an iPad. "Name?" he asked. "Thomas Wright," I said. He tapped the screen. His eyes widened slightly. He tapped again, then looked up at me with an expression I recognized. Pity mixed with contempt. "I'm sorry, sir," he said. "You're not on the list." "There must be a mistake," I said. "I'm Marcus Wright's father." The guard looked at the iPad again. He turned it toward me. There, in a file labeled "Do Not Admit," was a photo of me taken from my driver's license. Above it, in red capital letters, "Thomas Wright, remove on site, trespasser, security risk." Below that, in smaller text, "If this individual attempts entry, contact Marcus Wright immediately. Do not engage. Do not negotiate. Remove from premises. I stared at the screen. My son hadn't just excluded me from his guest list. He'd flagged me as a security threat. He'd treated me like a stalker, like someone who might cause a scene and ruin his perfect night. The guard was waiting for me to react. He probably expected me to yell, to demand to speak to Marcus, to make the scene my son was so afraid of. Instead, I nodded. Understood, I said. Thank you for your time. I turned and walked back through the marble lobby, through the revolving doors, back into the rain. I didn't call Marcus. I didn't send a text. I walked 3 blocks to the parking garage, climbed into my truck, and sat in the silence. My phone was in my pocket. I pulled it out and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I needed. Gerald Hawthorne, the attorney who'd structured the Ironclad Ventures deal 4 years ago. Gerald answered on the first ring. Tom, he said, how's the big night? It's not, I said. I need you to pull the IPO. There was silence on the line. Tom, he said carefully, are you sure? We're talking about walking away from a potential $200 million payout. I'm not walking away, I said. I'm pulling the plug. Execute the clause in the convertible note. As majority shareholder, I'm exercising my right to withdraw consent for the public offering. Gerald exhaled slowly. If we do this, the SEC will require an immediate disclosure. The IPO will be canceled. Tech Vista will have to return all the subscription money. Marcus will. He'll be finished. His reputation, his credibility, it'll be destroyed. Good, I said. Do it now. Tom, Gerald said. He's your son. He's not acting like it, I replied. And he needs to learn that you can't build an empire on someone else's foundation and then pretend the foundation never existed. Make the call, Gerald. Consider it done, Gerald said. I'm contacting the SEC and the underwriters now. This is going to get ugly. I hung up. I started my truck. I didn't drive home. I drove to a diner 2 miles away, ordered a cup of coffee, and waited. 22 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Marcus. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Then the texts started coming in, one after another, filling my screen. Dad, where are you? What did you do? Gerald said you pulled the IPO. This is insane. Call me right now. You're destroying everything. Dad, please. I put the phone face down on the diner table. I finished my coffee. I ordered a piece of pie. I ate it slowly, savoring every bite, while my phone vibrated itself across the Formica surface. 37 minutes after I'd made the call to Gerald, the news broke. I watched it happen in real time on the diner's television mounted above the counter. The business news channel cut to breaking news. Tech Vista IPO canceled last minute. Majority shareholder withdraws consent. Company in crisis. The anchor was breathless. This is unprecedented, she said. Tech Vista was set to be one of the biggest tech IPOs of the year, valued at over $2 billion. But just minutes before the opening bell, the company's majority shareholder, identified only as Ironclad Ventures LLC, withdrew consent for the offering, citing breach of fiduciary duty. The screen cut to footage from the Pinnacle Hotel. I could see guests flooding out of the ballroom, some on their phones, others shouting at the staff. The champagne fountain had been shut off mid-pour. The stage where Marcus was supposed to ring the ceremonial bell sat dark and empty. My phone rang again. This time it was Vanessa. I declined the call. She texted immediately. Mr. Wright, you need to fix this. Marcus is having a panic attack. Investors are threatening to sue. What is wrong with you? I typed a single reply. Tell Marcus I'm the factory worker he was too embarrassed to let through the door. Tell him that factory worker owns 60% of his company. Tell him to call me when he's ready to have an honest conversation. I paid for my pie and drove home. The media storm lasted for 3 days. Business reporters camped outside Tech Vista's headquarters. Marcus gave a disastrous press conference where he claimed the cancellation was due to technical issues with the underwriters, but the SEC had already released a statement confirming that the majority shareholder had withdrawn consent. Reporters started digging. They found the Ironclad Ventures filing. They found the convertible note, They found my name as the managing member of the LLC. On day 4, Bloomberg ran the headline, TechVista CEO's father torpedoes IPO after being banned from celebration. The article included a photo of me, pulled from an old industry magazine when I'd sold my manufacturing business. It also included an interview with an anonymous source, later revealed to be the security guard from the Pinnacle, who confirmed that Marcus Wright had personally submitted my photo with instructions to bar me from entry. The internet did what the internet does. The story went viral, and Number Dad Revenge trended on Twitter. Reddit had a field day. People who'd never heard of TechVista were weighing in on whether I was a hero or a monster. Business ethicists debated whether a father should have the right to tank his son's company. Family therapists wrote op-eds about toxic parent-child relationships. I didn't read any of it. I was too busy dealing with the fallout at TechVista. As majority shareholder, I had a fiduciary duty to the company, and right now that company was hemorrhaging money. The canceled IPO had triggered penalty clauses in a dozen contracts. 2 major clients had pulled out. 3 board members had resigned. I called an emergency board meeting. When I walked into the TechVista conference room, Marcus was already there. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His suit was wrinkled. His eyes were red. Vanessa sat next to him, her phone in her hand. But for once, she wasn't scrolling. She was staring at me with pure hatred. Dad, Marcus started. I held up a hand. We're not doing this as father and son right now, I said. We're doing this as majority shareholder and CEO. Sit down. He sat. I addressed the room. The IPO is dead, I said. We're not revisiting that decision. What we need to focus on is stabilizing the company and regaining investor confidence. That starts with leadership changes. Marcus shot to his feet. You can't remove me as CEO, he said. I built this company. You built it with my money, I corrected him. Under the terms of our agreement, I have the right to appoint and remove officers at will. I'm not removing you. I'm demoting you. Effective immediately, you're stepping down as CEO. You'll take the role of Chief Technology Officer. You're good at the tech side, Marcus. You understand the product, but you don't understand business. And you clearly don't understand people. Vanessa stood up. This is abuse, she hissed. You're punishing him because he didn't want you at his party. I looked at her. I had a background check run on you last week, Vanessa, I said. Would you like me to share the results with the room? Or would you prefer to leave quietly? Her face went pale. Marcus looked at her, confused. What is he talking about? I slid a folder across the table. Vanessa Chen, age 29, I read from the file. 375,000 Instagram followers, 72% of which were purchased from bot farms in Eastern Europe. Brand partnerships with companies that don't exist. Engagement rate of 0.3%, well below industry standard for authentic influencers. Current debt, $220,000 across 9 credit cards. Evicted from previous apartment for non-payment. Currently under investigation by the FTC for undisclosed sponsored content. Marcus opened the folder. His hands were shaking. Vanessa grabbed for it, but I'd brought copies. This is slander, she said. It's public record, I replied. Every piece of information in that file came from legal sources. Court documents, credit reports, FTC filings. You've been running a con, Vanessa. And my son was your mark. She looked at Marcus. Baby, she said. This is all lies. Your father is trying to turn you against me. Marcus was reading the eviction notice. He looked up at her. You told me you owned a condo in River North. I do, she stammered. I did. I sold it. For the wedding. We haven't set a wedding date, Marcus said quietly. Vanessa grabbed her purse. You're all insane, she said. Marcus, call me when you've dealt with your toxic father. She walked out. The door slammed behind her. No one in the room spoke. Marcus sat down slowly, still holding the folder. The rest of the meeting was short. I installed an interim CEO, a woman named Patricia Reeves, who'd been the company's CFO and actually knew how to run a business. I restructured the board, removing 2 of Marcus's college friends who'd been given seats as favors. I brought in a crisis management firm to handle the press. When everyone else had left, I looked at Marcus. He was still sitting at the table, staring at the folder. Why didn't you tell me, he asked, about the money, about Ironclad, about all of it? Because I wanted you to build something on your own, I said. I wanted you to succeed or fail based on your own merit, not because you were Thomas Wright's son. But I didn't build it on my own, he said bitterly. I built it with your money. You built it with someone's money, I said. Every company needs capital. The question is what you do with it. You took $3 million and turned it into a company worth $2 billion. That's impressive, Marcus. That's real. But somewhere along the way, you started believing your own press. You started thinking that success meant forgetting where you came from. You embarrass me, Dad, he said. His voice cracked. You show up in your flannel shirts and your old truck, and people judge me for it. They think I'm trash. Then those people aren't worth impressing, I said. And if you're building a company to impress shallow people instead of building it to solve real problems, then you've already failed. He looked at me. There were tears in his eyes. I didn't know how to tell you. Tell me what? That I was scared, he said. Scared that people would find out I didn't come from money. Scared that they'd think I wasn't smart enough or connected enough. Vanessa, she made me feel like I could be someone important, someone who mattered. You've always been someone who matters, I said. But not because of your company or your girlfriend or your net worth. You matter because you're my son, and I failed you, Marcus. I gave you money, but I didn't give you enough confidence to be proud of who you are. He broke down then, really broke down, sobbing into his hands. I walked around the table and put my hand on his shoulder. We're going to fix this, I said. But we're doing it the right way. No shortcuts. No fake narratives. You're going to rebuild this company's reputation by being honest about where you came from and who helped you get here. And you're going to start by apologizing to every person you threw under the bus to protect your image. Over the next 6 months, Marcus did exactly that. He gave interviews where he talked openly about growing up in a working-class neighborhood, about his father who worked in factories and taught him the value of hard work. He apologized to the employees he'd neglected, the board members he'd dismissed, the investors he'd misled. It wasn't easy. Tech Vista lost 30% of its valuation. Several major investors pulled out. But slowly, steadily, the company stabilized. Marcus, working as CTO instead of CEO, actually started contributing to the product again. He designed a new feature that increased user engagement by 40%. He rebuilt relationships with clients. He showed up to the office in jeans and a t-shirt instead of a $3,000 suit. Patricia Reeves turned out to be an excellent CEO. She restructured the company's finances, negotiated new contracts, and prepared for a future IPO that would happen when the company was actually ready, not when Marcus's ego demanded it. As for me, I stayed in my small ranch house. I kept driving my truck. I kept wearing my flannel shirts. But now, when Marcus visited, which he did every Sunday for dinner, he didn't apologize for where I lived or how I dressed. He sat at my kitchen table, ate the meatloaf I made, and told me about his week. 1 year after the canceled IPO, Tech Vista went public again. This time, it was different. The prospectus included a full disclosure of the company's ownership structure and my role as the original investor. Marcus gave a speech at the celebration where he thanked me by name, called me his hero, and told the world that the best business decision he'd ever made was listening to his father. I was there for the opening bell. Not in the ballroom, but on the trading floor, standing next to my son as he rang the bell. I wore a suit that day, not because I was ashamed of my flannel shirts, but because Marcus had asked me to match his. We stood together, father and son, as the stock price climbed and the room erupted in applause. After the bell, after the speeches and the champagne, Marcus and I walked out of the stock exchange together. The photographers shouted questions. The reporters wanted a statement. Marcus ignored them all. He turned to me. "Thank you, Dad," he said. "For what?" I asked. "For not giving up on me," he said. "For teaching me that real success isn't about hiding who you are. It's about being proud of it." I put my arm around his shoulder. "That's the lesson, son. It took me 65 years to learn it myself. I'm just glad you figured it out faster." We walked to the parking garage where my truck was parked next to his Tesla. He looked at the old Silverado, rust on the fender, 200,000 miles on the odometer. "You ever gonna get a new one?" he asked, smiling. Not until this one stops running, I said. It's got plenty of miles left in it, just like you, he said. We live in a world that tells us we should be ashamed of our origins, that success means erasing the past and projecting an image of perfection. My son learned the hard way that the foundation you build on matters more than the height of the building. When you're ashamed of the hands that helped you climb, you're standing on hollow ground. Sometimes the greatest gift a father can give is not the money in his pocket, but the lesson that comes from taking it away. True wealth isn't measured in stock prices or Instagram followers. It's measured in the strength of your character when everything else is stripped away.